Yeah. Okay, so now let's move to section 2, which are questions about Twitter and the mother of all Twitter files. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think this might be my last interview that I do, and I'm just going to reference everybody to this
Well, I'm okay with that.
because you're covering everything.
Okay. Okay. So the premise here that we'll see if you agree with is that Twitter conspired with the U.S. government to take away the First Amendment. First of all, do you agree with that statement?
It's not about agreeing. I mean, it's been laid out
Yes.
very effectively, succinct. I mean,
Yes. I'm just
the
making
Twitter
sure.
files.
Yes.
Go to
Okay.
the Twitter files. Go to the Weaponization Committee hearings and the
Yep.
content that they've produced. Go to the Judiciary Committee hearings.
So
Go
so
to
wait
the
wait wait wait
Oversight
wait wait
Committee
wait.
hearings.
So that's
I
actually
sat behind these people. Let's
yeah.
go with oversight. Start with the Oversight Committee.
Okay.
James
Hang on.
Comer heads it
Okay.
up.
Okay.
As
Okay.
I'm sitting there listening to one of the members of the committee, Nancy Mace, come out and say, "Hey, I was duped by you guys into injecting myself and mutilating my body. And now I have an adverse reaction that I can't really address." And this is like before this, she came out with that. She was like a one of the toxic, feckless, coward Republicans, right?
Right.
That kowtowed and was duped into everything. And then she finally woke up and she called out. Who testified, by the way? Jim Baker testified at the hearing. Number two, Vijaya Gade, who was he was the deputy general counsel. She was the general counsel. And then the head of trust and safety was Yoel Roth. Guess what? So as he comes in and sits down, I basically stand up and say, "Hey, Jim Baker, Ivan Raiklin here. Remember that name." He's like, "No, no, no." I said, "No, remember that name." And then I said, "You too, Vijaya and Yoel," as they sat down, and Vijaya was shivering uh, during her opening statement as I sat directly behind them. And I have this on video. And again, I'm going to put together probably a documentary movie called The Deep State Marauder, which captures all the instances that I've marauded, not only the reporters of Politico, of New Woke Slimes, of Washington Compost, but also the belligerent executive branch actors known as Chris Ray Epps, Merrick Garland, Ali Mayorkas, the Jim Bakers of the world, right? And the Lloyd Austins, the Mark Millies of the world. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So
Can you let me take a 30-second break because I got to get something to drink. Can we
yeah,
pause it?
yeah, no problem.
Okay.
Let me pause the recording. Resume. We are resumed. Okay, so we just went over some of the evidence for the Twitter conspiring with the U.S. government. Some of these things include that Twitter censored information about vaccines. Nancy Mace specifically talked about this. The Twitter files release, which evidences that the organizations like the National Science Foundation were essentially looking for misinformation and contacting Twitter to censor certain subject
Yes.
matters.
So they
Yeah.
had a specific portal
Yeah.
between government and Twitter that was set up in order to do the censorship. Two components I got to like, this is so important to understand
Yes.
with this question. Number one, you had the portal between CISA, I forgot the name of the organization that they created, and it was like a backdoor discussion group, and then internal Slack channel coordinated effort between the Office of Director of National Intelligence, the
Yes.
Foreign Influence Task Force at the FBI. CISA had also countering foreign information task force or influence task force at CISA.
Yep.
And obviously the San Francisco field office of the FBI would have been the coordinating effort there. Elvis Chan was the key conduit with that. And then Jim Baker was the conduit within Twitter because he was the senior person from the organizations that were part of coordinating with the government, right? So
right. So yes, there's a string of connections that the government was influencing Twitter to have them label things as misinformation and censor.
Yeah, because they're protecting the Biden criminal syndicate, and that means they have to stop any content that exposes their illegitimacy. One, the electoral stuff. You got to remember, a lot of this stuff happens because in November of 2018, Democrats win the House, and then Nancy Pelosi, Speaker of the House. Nancy Pelosi is literally the representative of San Francisco,
Right.
which is providing top cover for the biggest donors to her political legacy.
Right.
It's like, it's right there. It's in your face, folks.
Right.
She's providing the top cover for this to happen.
So let me ask a question about this weaponization committee. What is the weaponization committee? As an American citizen, I don't know what that committee is or what it does.
Yeah, so let me see how far in depth I want to go with this. So it's a subcommittee of the Judiciary Committee. The way that the U.S. Congress works, you have the House and the Senate under Article 1 branch, under Article 1 of the U.S. Constitution.
Right.
Within that, you have the Speaker of the House that's voted in at the first part of the Congress, right? And then they decide on who becomes the chair of the different committees. There's standing committees, and then there's permanent select committees, and then there are committees that are created, voted in by the Congress, that are like only authorized for that particular Congress. Like right now, we're in the 118th Congress, the 118th two-year term Congress. And in that Congress, it was a negotiated agreement between the House Freedom Caucus, of which I advised, and Kevin McCarthy, which was the first Speaker of the House under this Congress, where he created the Weaponization Committee. It's a subcommittee of the Judiciary Committee. The Judiciary Committee chaired by Jim Jordan, and then the Weaponization Committee also chaired by Jim Jordan, for what it's worth. Mm-hmm. A second committee that was created was the COVID Select Committee on the Coronavirus Pandemic, which is a subcommittee of oversight under James Comer, and then the chair of that select committee is Brad Wenstrup, worthless. And then the third committee that was created was a separate committee called the Committee on the Chinese Communist Party. Okay. Which was to expose Chinese Communist Party influence on U.S. institutions.
Okay.
Yeah, whatever.
But
anyway, weaponization specifically goes into the weaponization of the federal government against Americans.
Yes, that's what I'm interested
in. So that's been the focus of exposing partially what I've already laid out.
Right.
The First Amendment violations, the Fourth Amendment violations. But again, even though the authorization is to go after all elements of the government, since it is a subcommittee of the Judiciary Committee, the jurisdiction is primarily focused in on FBI and DOJ's weaponization against Americans.
Is there somewhere where we can read the findings of this committee? I'd be deeply interested in reading about what the Weaponization Committee has found and what they conclude.
Yeah, so go to the website, judiciary.house.gov.
Okay.
And click on the committee. The committee. Oh, no. Hover over it and then go to subcommittees.
Subcommittees.
And then scroll down and see the last one. Select subcommittee on the weaponization of the federal government. And then you can see who's on there. And then you can scroll. And then on the right, or I should say, you can see recent activity, or you can scroll to documents and then find up top any of the documents that have been produced.
Hang on, folks, I see recent activity. These are some, so I can read this later. I can look at some of this stuff.
Yeah.
Well, but within this Weaponization Committee, they have released documents that demonstrate that that the government was targeting individuals. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So let's go to the mother of all Twitter files. Let me just try to see if I can correctly understand what this is. This is the idea that Elon Musk has access to the private communications through X, so to the DMs, of government officials that were conspiring with Twitter. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So wait a second. Let me log in. Go ahead.
Okay. And so, like, I've been thinking about this, right? Like, I'm thinking about this conundrum that it's kind of a conundrum for Elon, where in theory, he probably can't release these DMs because that would be bad for the X. Like, you wouldn't want users to think that their DMs are going to get released. But so then, is it correct that the strategy is then if Elon Musk moves the company to Texas, then the Attorney General of Texas can subpoena the company for those files to check to see if any Texans' rights were violated? Is that like the strategy?
So there's two
Okay.
layers to this.
Okay.
The first layer is if you agree with me that Jim Baker, well, we know that Jim Baker was the deputy general counsel at Twitter. And it's probably, I mean, would you agree that he probably was issued a company phone, tablet, laptop, and computer, or a
Oh,
combination thereof?
yeah, for sure.
And is it likely that he communicated on those devices?
Yes.
And is it likely that his Twitter account, the Jim Baker, also was utilized and used? The direct messages were probably used.
Yes.
So imagine we take Jim Baker's situation,
Yeah.
apply that to him, apply it to Kamala Harris's comms team that used to work at Twitter 1.0, and then apply it to every single member on my 600-person deep state target list as it applies to if they were Twitter employees. Then there's a bigger swath of evidence, communications that we can draw from, and their direct messages, which have, if the geotagging, location data services was on for the app Twitter, that means that the communication, when it occurred and where the device was located, gives us a jurisdictional component of that communication. Now, imagine that communication meets the elements of RICO, of treason, of you name the crime, right?
Right.
And then apply it to the crime within the jurisdiction upon which it occurred, Texas, Kansas, Missouri, right, etc. That means that evidence, it's criminal evidence that Elon Musk has that is now away from the jurisdiction and influence of Gavin Newsom and the left, now within the purview of Texas and the AG Ken Paxton, who just wrapped up last year the failed impeachment attempt of him by the Bush-Cheney syndicate. Right? You see how all this stuff starts to line up?
Yes.
So then Elon Musk, he can release a lot more than what he's released. Why? Because when he was doing the initial Twitter files release, it was before he even jumped in to endorse President Trump. Now he's in a position where he's like, what can I do to guarantee President Trump wins based on my holdings?
Right.
All right. So then he's more motivated now to go back into his Twitter files or Twitter holdings to then see what he can do maximally within low legal risk to expose yet the mother of all Twitter files, right?
Right.
I'm just making it simple by telling him who to look at and what to look at, and then where you can find it and the people.
Right.
With the list provided to, it's been provided to Schellenberger. It's been provided to Taibbi. I had a 5-hour meeting with Taibbi and others. Ken Paxton has awareness of this. Jim Jordan, James Comer, Barry Loudermilk. So a lot of key people are tracking.
So there are people who have seen like files like this. And
I'm just compiling publicly available information. There's nothing in there that's outside of anything that's not public. Okay. It's just more organized, if you will.
So we're trying to get more of this information released specifically from the people on your deep state target list.
Yeah. So who can, right. So Elon can dig further specifically on these people within his Twitter holdings, the emails, the internal Slack channels, the direct messages, and then geotag it and then divvy it up to the red states that have red AGs. And maybe Paxton is like the conduit as he divvies it out based on the agreements and treaties between the states on this law enforcement matter. And then he motivates the AGs to say, hey, just conduct the precedent set by Peekaboo James in New York. Right?
Right.
Or they send it out to the district's attorneys for them to conduct Fulton Fanny precedent or Alvin Bragg precedent, right? Because those are DAs. And then the sheriffs can be given the guidance of, why don't you conduct the objectively reasonable precedent that was conducted by Michael Byrd, U.S. Capitol Police Officer, on Ashley Babbitt, or objectively reasonable precedent that was set on by Lila Morris, Metropolitan Police Department officer, on Roseanne Boylan.
Right.
Or they can just simply do stuff like they did the precedent on Roger Stone, the live stream swatting raid kidnapping, or to Peter Navarro, the armed robbery kidnapping, or to Steve Bannon, the swatting kidnappings. Or in the case of a congressman like Jamie Ratskin, why don't they just do the precedent set on Marjorie Taylor Greene, or the former House Freedom Caucus chairman, still current member of Congress, Scott Perry, and we apply both of those. Armed robbery, swatting, we apply it to good old Jamie Ratskin and his wife, right? And the same residence.
Yeah. So what you're saying is that if a crime was committed in a certain location, we have record of that. The sheriffs can deputize people to go after those people.
Well, the DA then puts, right, the DA gets the evidence, puts the criminal referral in, signs the warrant for the arrest, and then the sheriff can go ahead and say, hey, I need help.
Yeah.
Who can I get help from? Oh, what about those signers of the Declaration of Military Accountability? Wait, you mean the people that were kicked out of the military because of the illegal jab mandate? Wait, that's like 80, 100,000. Wait, that's a cool group of people that will take really short time to train to then support the deputization so that we can conduct objectively reasonable conduct, as I just mentioned, legally, morally, ethically, to the max.
All right. I like that. Okay, so so now I understand what the mother of all Twitter file is. I understand sort of like the plan to execute.
Yeah, and then Ken Paxton can, like, all these AGs can subpoena, right? Yes, especially Ken Paxton.
Yes. Okay, so moving on to another question, which is I think pertinent to many Americans, is I think that the censorship goes very far on Twitter in that they're probably censoring many, many, many people's posts. And so is there any way for American citizens to check to see if they were actually censored from Twitter? Like, is there any way where I could check if I'm on it, or my friend could check if he's on
it? On GitHub, as it applies to the election stuff, he put out a list. And that was like the number 18th individual account that they feared the most and put it in the shadow ban.
Where's that process. GitHub? Where's that GitHub? How do I get access to that?
Oh man, you're making me do some work here. Hold up.
Well, so this is if I put that exact same prompt, I'm getting the same thing that you're saying.
Here, let me ask the guy that did this for me. Okay. Hey, can you resend me that GitHub link that showed me as one of the people censored on GitHub by the FBI? I think it was like number 18. I was above Lindell.
So I can check the GitHub as soon as I get that link.
Yeah, once I get the link, I'll send you it.
Okay.
Okay, let's keep going.
Okay, next question. And if you're getting tired, you can let me know.
No.
Okay.
Let's go.
Are you of Russian ancestry? And do you think that makes you get more likely to get put on the lists?
I mean, that is a legitimate question. My parents. So the short answer is yes. My parents fled the Soviet Union in 1974.
Right.
Okay. And the reason why they were political asylum, because what happened to General Flynn basically happened to my father at the hands of the KGB, because he was trying to speak truth to power during his master's thesis, exposing Khrushchev's policies on trying to grow corn from north to south after his trip to Iowa.
Right.
And so as he was calling that out, saying, yeah, that doesn't work in the tundra and the Arctic.
Yeah.
And so as he was basically doing that, KGB caught wind of it, knocked on the door, tried to get the manuscript for the thesis to get him in, and start to throw him in the gulag. Yeah. My mom was able to burn the manuscript, and his thesis chair was able to essentially say, hey man, I was able to protect you from the gulag, but you can't finish your degree. So goodbye. And so under the Jackson-Vanik Amendment, he was able to flee the Soviet Union into the United States. And then I was born. So, I mean, the short answer is are you of Russian ancestry? Yes. The nuance is they fled communism legally, and then now I'm here fighting it in America. And I would say that no, that has my assessment is that no,
Okay.
but once if you're on the political target list and they find that out about you, then they're going to try to figure out and skew it. Luckily, I'm not going to disclose it here, but I have. So there's a document called the SF-86, which is standard Form 86 that you have to fill out in order to obtain a top secret clearance in the U.S. military, U.S. government. So as part of that, you have to go into your everything background.
Yeah.
Luckily, in my last interview, when they kind of followed up to make sure that everything, all the dots, I's are dotted, T's are crossed, I provided a let's just say fail-safe content to them. And they asked me, is there anything else that you want to say that you haven't covered in our interview? And the thing that I said was specifically, I can't believe how I can forecast things. I basically said that there are certain components that I mentioned in this interview that I've explained it to you as a representative of the government. Mm-hmm. Understanding that if it does get out and is utilized by the Speaker of the House and Adam Bullshit, I think I mentioned Adam Schiff, but I specifically said Nancy Pelosi, they're going to try to use that as part of their narrative of the Russia hoax.
Yeah.
And I said, I want you to write that down so that when I have to FOIA it, I can use it against them.
Yeah.
And she was like, ha ha. I'm like, no, I'm serious.
Yeah.
Write it down. I'll wait for you to finish writing that as part of your notes. So because I did that as a preemptive countermeasure, while they wanted to probably apply the Russia to me in the government, I don't think they did. They may have tried to use that as a vector, but when they found nothing, because remember, they had to look through everything.
Yeah.
So there was nothing there. I did everything by the book. But needless to say, I'm sure they wanted to, because it would have perpetuated their narrative, just like they did on Carter Page, on General Flynn, right?
Yeah.
And so luckily, I've operated very cleanly for such a time as this to go after them.
Okay. Next question is, again, about Twitter 1.0, before Elon owned it. So when I was on Twitter 1.0, I remember the 2020 and 2016 campaigns very vividly. There were a ton of MAGA accounts that were doing these Trump trains, and there were a ton of memes. And after Trump lost the election, many of those accounts were systematically disappeared. So there are many accounts that I used to follow that I have track of that are now disappeared. They're gone. And I wonder if the censorship complex forced those accounts to be deleted. Do you know any information about that, or were any of your accounts deleted, or any of your friends' accounts deleted?
So I only know about the January 10th purge. Okay. So I can't really count January 10th of 2021. So the way it worked was, January 6th, Mike Pence presided over the lack of quorum illegal certification. On January 7th, basically in the wee hours into January 6th, he kind of sealed the deal with the Fedsurrection. And then on January 8th, the censorship came in mass, and I basically called it out the day prior. I was like, see ya. I'll see you over at Parler, because they're probably going to shut everybody down.
Yeah.
And then I had a meeting with the Parler CEO in June of 2019, basically with a couple other folks. And you can do some research and see who those other folks are. I'm sure there's a picture out there. But with the Parler CEO and we had a conversation, and we were like, this was June of 2019, and we said, hey man, what are you using for your cloud? What's your stack reside on? The intellectual property. He's like, we're on AWS. And we're like, you need, literally, as soon as we get out of this meeting, you need to get off of that, because you're gonna be taken out. I mean, that's Jeff Bezos. That's Jeff Bezos here.
Yeah.
No, we're good. Well, unfortunately, on January 10th, Parler was taken down, right?
Yeah.
Because AWS decided to remove them. Again, people don't like to listen and they face consequences.
Right.
So that's the day we all went to Telegram. And then, the rest is history. Truth was created and we started to kind of like go into other directions. Getter.
Okay.
Now we're
Yeah.
back on X.
Okay. Okay. Well,
That's the longest non-answer I can give you.
Well, it kind of gives some. It does demonstrate that there was a purge of at least some apps. And what I'm wondering is, it's possible that there was a targeted purge of actual Twitter 1.0 accounts.
Well, absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
the short answer is absolutely. When you look at the list that I showed you, when you look at, I'll have to get that link to that GitHub. I mean, it's clearly set up that way.
Yeah.
And then they were targeted further because when you look at the construct of the January 6th cover-up, the Fedsurrection cover-up committee, and who was in there, you can see all the names of the individuals that were involved, the contractors and the members and their staff that were involved in it. And then you can read, I mean, it'll take a time, but I did it. There's about 20 books of those that were on the committee, affiliates within the White House, as well as witnesses before the January 6th Fedsurrection cover-up committee that in the collective really expose all of it. And one in particular, Denver Raiklin, who's a technical advisor, talks about the 6 different teams that were set up within the January 6th Fedsurrection committee. You got the blue team, the orange team, purple, whatever. And if you look at the details of each of those teams, it has the specific purpose to, one, cover up the U.S. Capitol Police's role and those in the government, and then with a specific other purpose of going after President Trump's affiliates that are in the most capable position to expose the Fedsurrection, the illegal election, all of the shenanigans.
Yeah.
And so they had to target and go after all of them. I mean, the John Eastmans, right? The Mike Lindells, the Steve Bannons. I mean, these are all people that can expose Mike Pence. The litmus test is if you can expose Mike Pence maximally and create consequence, him and his kind of cabal, then you're going to get literally, lawfare destroyed. But I had the luxury of learning from all these other, A-listers, if you will. And I'm like in this quasi weird position for them because I know about them in so much detail and I'm not close to President Trump the way that they were. So it's like this balancing act for them. I think I'm in a position of creating too much greater risk for them if they raise my profile by coming after me. So their easiest path is to censor me out maximally. Right. But now they're in a difficult position to do so with Elon on board with us.
Right. Okay. So that gets us answers essentially all my questions, or we have answered all the other questions at an earlier time on the Twitter. Okay. So we're going to the final section here.
Investigate real time to die. I shall meet death head on. Nigga Kane, you've got to get out of here. Beware foul demons and beasts. There are many foes here. The time has come to cleanse my heart. This monastery reeks with evil and corruption. I hate staining my hands with the blood of foul sorcerers. Eternal suffering would be too great for you, Diablo. At the gate,